Hi there, this is Popo, I hope you're fine. Welcome back to the Matches Neura tournament, round 2. And today we're going to review the two games played between LilyLionmane and Artika. So let's get started. Okay, so for the first game, LilyLionmane gets the white pieces with the Fairies faction, and Artika gets the black pieces with the Chtulu faction. So the Fairies are known to capture in a very odd way. A lot of times they're going to capture without putting their pieces on the squares is meant to capture. So you have to be very careful because these odd ways of capturing are very hard to dodge. On the other hand, the Chtulu are able to manage some mana points thanks to some actions in the game, and then manage these mana points to make their pieces promote a little earlier than expected. So the higher the score would be written on the brain, the better the Chtulu would be. So it takes a lot of time to get all the strength of this faction, but if you have the time too, normally that would be very difficult to counter this faction. So let's see how it goes. The game starts with pawn to d4, and already you see that the Chtulu get 2 points here. Why? Because there's a passive actions to the wings, and when a wing is alive, they can provide 1 MP per turn. So we have limb to e6, and now pawn to c4 is played. We have eyeball to b4 check, and here it comes with a very concrete idea. When the eyeball captures a piece or any unit, it gets immediately 10 MPs. So for example, trading against a Pixie would be good for them. But of course the Fairies don't want to trade this and decide to play frog to c3. And now this frog can capture like a knight, but also can capture like checkers here. So this is a direct threat to the eyeball. And here the question is that, do you want to trade immediately? The Chtulu thinks not, and I pretty agree with them. So we have eyeball to e7, and now we have Pixie to f4. And now the Pixie is a bishop by 3, and it can captures only range 2 and 3 without moving. So on the next turn it threats, if you do for example nothing like this, to capture this, and the pawn vanishes. So you have to react to this. So here we have something tempted by the Chtulu which is very interesting, which is eyeball to g5. As you can't capture range 1, this is the direct threat here. You can decide maybe to go for Pixie e5 and trying to get a fork, but after, let's say, limb to d6, so you can't capture one square away, you're forced to go to g3, and now you can play the very disgusting eyeball to f4, and here you can't capture and your piece is doing nothing in the way. So for example, let's say that you might play this move, then you capture the other way, you have the stuff, and then the game continues, and the trade would be cool for them. But in the game we have Wisp to d2, which is the best move of this position, obviously, and it defends, and you have to do something. Here you could continue the game and try to apply some pressure, but the Chtulu decide to take on f4, and after Wisp captures without moving, because this is the ability, exactly 2 square away is captured without moving. The game continues here. So we have already 22 mana points for the Chtulu, but you see that they're very, very down in terms of development. So they have to do something else, they're going to be obliterated from the game. We have a limb to b6, so trying to claim the diagonal here, and we have pawn to g3, we have eyeball to b7 and Pixie to g2. And here this is a fight between these two pieces. We have range 3 but capture without moving, and here we have range 4. If you decide to go immediately for the kill here, I mean you can run into this kind of line, and okay, this is not wished to get this. So instead we have the temporary tube to e7, so applying more pressure here, so very good move. And now we have pawn to h4, so trying to build an attack for the king side. We have short castle and now pawn to e4. So the Fairies have a very open field, I would say, but a lot of initiative for the attack. But on the other hand, the Chtulu are not doing a lot of things. Here, something you should try is play limb to d6 and try to go for this, and try to open the more possible the game. You want to put this here, I don't know, prepare something. But in the game, instead, we have wing to e8, and I think this is very passive, because in no way do we want to play immediately this and launch this. This is very weak. but okay, this is tried. Now we have Frog to f3 and Limb to d5 is tried. So trying to get now the white squares because this frog is just cutting the way of the Pixie. Now we have captures, and the pawn is pushed to e5. And suddenly, with this move, it makes the eyeball very stupid. So that's pretty unfortunate, and the only way you can counter this pawn is to push here and maybe weaken your structure. So you have to find some way. Again, playing the limb to this 7 would be interesting with the wing here and try to counter-strike on the queen side, as white didn't castle yet. But instead we have limb to a6, and I think this is very passive. I don't know what this move is for, maybe trying to prevent this from going to the game, but I can tell you, this is not where it wants to strike, rather I want to strike to this side. And this is exactly what happens because we have pawn to h5, which is played. Here, the best move is just to let that happen. And if you want to push, then you counter push. There's no Pixie anymore, so you have to attack from the light squares, and you see that for now the only way the Pixie can try to strike is defend it. I mean, later on the Wisp can try to go here and claim this pawn, but for now the squares can be pretty well defended here, and it takes a lot of time actually to make it to this square because you have to move a lot of pieces here. So maybe the Chtulu would be able to reroute their pieces, maybe put this here and then this here and reroute that, and that would control this square. I don't know. Here in the game instead we have limb to h6, and I guess this is exactly what the Fairies wanted, because now they can replicate with Wisp to f4, and I can tell you that this pawn is about to be captured. You can think about a limb to g5 to get a counter-attack. I mean, why not? The only problem is that this is taken en passant, and after pawn takes g6, what do you do? The Chtulu strike back with 2 to g6, which is a pretty cool move to play, and now we have Wisp to g4, so now this is directly attacking the tube and threatening to capture it without moving. And okay, if you just retreat back, then the Shroom is going to get to the place, and you're going to face some big difficulties. Here in the game we have hard to d7, which is played, and okay, it wants to attack here, and seems like you don't have enough good squares. For example, you can try to get here, but I mean you can defend with the brain going here and try to get here. Only problem being is that there is a killer move that can be played, is pawn to e6, and now it attacks this and this at the same time. So if you decide to take here, you're going to take without moving, so you're dead here. And even if you want to take here and bet on the fact that, okay, there's a trick, if captures here, you capture, remember that you have a frog, so it captures back here. So the only way to deal in this kind of position, if you want to try to keep the things equal, is just to let the piece be and try to capture your own way. But I don't feel that this is the right move to be played here. For example, if you try to counter push with limb to f5, then captures, here he captures with the Shroom with check, and here let's say that you want to thread this, then you can just capture here on h5, and if you capture that, you're going to capture this, and after capture, then you capture this without moving, and you up 6 points of material. The Chtulu, okay, I have 55 points of MP, so maybe they can try to get back a piece, but not enough for me. So here, what's to be played in this position? You could have tried eyeball to c8, directly targeting that. And if you try for the same tactic here, this is a little tricky to get, because now you can follow with the... Excuse me. Let me get all the moves right to be sure I don't mess anything. I guess a limb to f5 can be tried here. And after, let's say, if you decide to capture this, then I'm going to capture that. And now you would be a little threatened, and now the activity is back to me. And then maybe I will go here, I don't know. So here, after this, you can decide to play Wisp to h5, and now, okay, the brain can defend with brain to g7. Even if you put the Shroom here to defend, then you defend with the wing. This is captured this way. Okay, excuse me, I have to play the wall line back. Okay, after this, and this, and this, and this, excuse me, I have to play the wall line. So after this, and this is defended this way. You can take it. I can take it, and then the game continues. And there's a direct threat here in the Shroom position, but that would not happen if you have the Shroom to h2. But just showing you the line. Excuse me, I'm got confused in my lines. So instead, with this move, you're pretty forced to capture with the limb, and now the Wisp captures, and they're up 2 points of material here in the game. So you have to do something. Of course, if you try to get to this tactic, this is obviously losing, because now you can get for Wisp to G6 and after Brain to H8, then you capture the wing, and you're again down a lot of points of material. So you have to do something against this kind of move. So we have Heart to G7, which is played trying to ask the Wisp to leave, and it goes to F4, now attacking this pawn. And okay, we have Wing to F8, just asking again the piece to leave, and now the Wisp decides to go back on E3. So somehow you dealt with this attack, but this is a way not over. So now we have Limb to C5, trying to strike here. The only problem is that that can be captured without moving. But in this position, the Fairies are so winning positionally that you can play the very subtle move Shroom to H4. And this is not seen, because we have 2 to C6. And now, let me show you this very nice trap, which is Shroom to G4. And that pins the heart to the king, so you have to take it. And now the frog decides to take it with checkers. And you're down 6 points of material, so you're losing the game. We have a limb takes d4, so trying to get a fork, but again there's the frog and they are tricky bastards, so now this is taken. We have 2 captures, with the captures without moving, and now the Fairies are just leading the game. Something is tried with eyeball to c6, and I have to admit that this is a pretty cool game, a cool tactic, and this is not seen by the Fairies. The best move here in this position is to play Wisp to e5. And it threats to get here and try to get some big threats, or even capture here with check, and then you're going to snap this. But here in the game we have Shroom to d1, which is played, and Italo did very cool tactic, Limb to d4, so attacking this and attacking this at the same time. I mean, this is not part of a big trick, because after, let's say, Wisp to e2, you capture that, and then you capture without moving. The only stuff is that, because there's a pawn here on the other side, you can play something like Limb to e5, and you threat to promote this pawn to tube, so be careful here. But here, I don't know, there's a little meltdown from the Fairies here, and we have Shroom to d5, so this is taking the default pawn in the way, special ability of the Shroom. And now after Limb captures, we have Wisp to e5, finally. So, okay, a lot of material gone for nothing, but why not? We have Wing to e8, which is tried to get something. The only problem is that that doesn't really work, because now it leads to frog to f6, and now this is some kind of winning trade. For example, if you play the Brain to h8, then you're going to capture this, then this is capture, then you're going to have check, so you have to get here, then you're going to have check, so you have to get here, and then you capture this, and you're completely winning the game. Maybe you can try to get this move Brain to f7, so trying to get some threat and try to capture this way. Only problem is that this is made after Wisp to f5, believe it or not. Because if you get here, you're going to be taken this way, if you get here, you're going to be taken this way. So, very nice pattern for the Fairies mate. So here, Wing to f6 is forced, so now we have Wisp takes f6, and now you're just losing the game, and be careful, because this is a big threat here going on the board. But do you have even a way of defending this? Maybe, if you decide to play Brain to h7, and now this is not happening. The only problem is that now it allows Wisp to f7, and after this you can just, you can't capture. So, okay, this is a way of defending, because after this, you can't capture as you're going to be captured back. So maybe this is a way of surviving the position, I guess. So, okay, I wasn't wrong in my notes to put the Brain here, but I mean, this is a little for nothing. In the position, we have a Limb to d4 trying something, maybe to try to get this, but the only problem is that now you have the Pixie going back to f1, and now there's a threat just to go here, and this is check, you're going to pick up the material, and this is fine. So this is why in this position we have Wing to e4, which is tried, and after King to d2, then you have to put the wing somewhere else, but unfortunately we have a Limb to h5. And here actually this is very difficult to play in this position, because somehow the wing seems completely trapped. There's no good square you can put it to be sure that it survives, so you're pretty doomed here in this position. Maybe you could try a brain to h7, and then it's safe because this is defending this way. And if you're checked, then you go on the dark squares, then this is again check, and you still go on this h7 square. So this is a way of defending that. But instead in the position we have limp to h5, so it allows the Wisp to g6 check, and after brain to f8 just collecting the material with Wisp takes e4. So not a lot of things to do. So the Chtulu tried to promote the pawn to a brain on d4, but that doesn't work because, again, the Wisp slides on f6 with check, and after brain to d8, then e8, excuse me, Wisp captures on d4, and you don't have anything to do in this position. And this is why we have on move 37 the resignation of Artika, as there was nothing much to be done. Here, allowing the Wisp to go very further into the position is always something that would cost you the game on some kind of examples. Like, I know not so much players that survive a Wisp being just in possibility to check the king anywhere. I don't know. So yeah, this was the first game here that was very violent, but we're going to witness immediately the second game playing between these two players, and oh my, this is a very tricky game you're going to witness. So let's get it already. Okay, so for the second game, Artika gets now the white pieces with the Centaurs faction, and LilyLionmane gets the black pieces with the Scarabs faction. The Centaurs allows you to move your opponent's pieces without their will, so you can dismantle their harmony and get them some very ugly looking positions. Very interesting to play. On the other hand, the Scarabs faction relies on coordination. Every time you move a piece type, another piece type would be buffed for the next turn. So if you play in the right order, maybe you can get very strong, because the buff it applies get them better move pattern and a lot of activity. So very interesting to go for. The game starts with round to d4. We have Urk to f6, and you see that by playing this Urk, it buffed the rook type units, which can now move for this turn also as knights. So they can decide to develop like this, which is crazy in terms of development. We have Satyr to f4, so maybe experiencing the London system with pawn to e6, and now Bear to c3 is played, diverging little from the main line, but why not? We have pawn to b6, and now round to e4 taking the center. But this is countered by stag to b7, and here the stag buff is the Urks. And now the Urks can decide to move for the next turn as bishop up to 2 squares. So if you play the natural looking moves here to defend that, then this is going to be taken and you're going to feel bad. So instead we have round to a5 just countering the main ID here, and okay, you could consider playing here, but I guess maybe they didn't want to expose the stag here because it can be countered like this kind of move, chief to e2, and let's say after the stag decides to go back to b7, when you have the chief on a rank or file I guess, and you have every piece in front of it, by just running into the king, it can drag it one square away, so it would uncastle the king, and this is not something good to experience. So instead we have Urk to e7, which is played, and now we have Satyr to d3, so be sure that this doesn't come here. But now we have the Urk going to g6, and okay, it threats to capture here the Satyr. Do you want to trade here? Not sure. That's not that of the good stuff. And here they could even get better, because they can be this kind of dog move, but I think that early in the game that might be a little threatening, because it can go for some kind of bear tactics. Maybe you're going to survive this because there's still this pawn hanging, but you have to be careful at the same time. So instead in the game we have Satyr to d2, which is played, and pawn to d5. So here for now this stag is not doing a lot of stuff, but we're going to see later if something happens, like if you decide to run this here, here, and push here. That can be interesting. We have run to f4, which is played, so trying to get the big attack over here, and now the stag goes to c8. And here there was something better to be played in this position. You have the ability with the ram to push your opponent's piece only pawn one move. So you can play this move, which is ram to e6. And now, this is not comfortable here, because you asked something with the f pawn, and somehow you're going to get some advantage in the position. But this is not seen, and ram to f4 is played. So after a stag to c8, so defending from the attack, even if you push here, this is going to be taken by the stag, and somehow you survive the position. Also, as this is buff, you may think that it wants to trade, but remember that this is only range 2, so it goes up here, so nothing to worry about. So we have chief to g4, which is played, so getting even more place here, and now Earth to c6 is played. There was a killer move that you could try here in this position, is to decide to drag the pieces here. And now you see that this Urk is just dead. So you have to put this on e4, and after, let's say, captures, and captures, now you're a pawn, you apply some pressure here, so somehow you have to defend the position, so let's say here, and then you can decide to capture, and after capture, then you can push here, and again, you're asking question about the position, so how you're going to deal with that. So again, this is not seen, and instead we have bird to e2, and maybe it aims to go here or even go here, why not? Now we have Earth back to e7, which is played, and now bird to f3. I think wrong move order here. Maybe you could push immediately the bear to g3 because you're just going to go for this. So let's go, and then you can put this bear on f3 because now with the bear immediately on f3, it allows a pawn to h5 to be played, and now okay, it kicks back the chip for this very g4 square that you liked, and now the chip goes back to g3. Now we have pawn to h4. Okay, you can decide to ignore that and get just back to g4. Yeah, why not? You have to be careful about dunk to h6 because it can go for big threats. You go here and you try to capture that, and somehow you don't feel comfortable in this kind of position, so I can understand that shift to e2 might be better. But now we have stacked to d7, so trying maybe to reroute later on this kind of diagonal, and 10 to g1 is played. Okay, why not? You can decide to castle long. 10 to g1, maybe the idea is to push here, to try to get this here. I mean, the king is not castled yet, so maybe this is the right idea. We have Urk to e4, which is played, and now this is a problem here, because by going on this position, now you're going to have to trade one of the satire. And maybe this is something that you don't want to experience here. I mean, so satire captures, pawn captures, and now the bear captures on h4. The material is still equal, but you see that this pawn will be a spine in the foot here, so not cool. We have a pawn to c5, so trying to counterattack in the center here, and okay, you have to do something. Here, ram to g4 is tried, so trying to get further ado, and now we have Urk to d5 going here. We have bear to g2. Here, okay, I see that you want to defend a little this pawn and try to get some attack. I mean, even if there can be an attack later on, let this bear be in the position and first play 10 to g3, so you get better position to defend that, and also you defend this from the fork here. So for example, if there's this, there's captures, and you capture back with the tent or with the chief, and you're okay. Because retreating the bear on g2, okay, this has no activity back, so very sad. We have pawn captures d4, and now the bear captures d4, and here we have stacked to dc5, so applying pressure here. We have ram to c3 defending, and now dunk to c8. Why not? We have shift to e2, now try to unpin, and here something that could be interesting to experience is to decide to play, to trade this. And after, let's say we have a trade, then you can slide it to c4. And now there's a threat. Basically, to go here, threat to go here. You get a better position, and you can't even take this pawn, because now you will experience some bad stuff with this very little move, stag to b5, or even stag here. And now you see that it gains some activity, and then the idea is to launch this here. So that might be interesting to play. Again, here in the position we have a pawn to f5 that can be perfectly played here, and we have ram to b4, taking the stag, so stag captures, ram captures, and a rhino to e7. So the game, as you see, is getting pretty messy, I have to admit. But okay, the position still stands and you can play it. Of course, this attacked twice this pawn, so you can decide to defend it this way. But instead, we have a pawn captures f5, and now we have pawn captures f5. 10 to f1 is played. I guess the idea is to play the bear here to try to get an exchange, and you have to keep this pawn defended. So 10 to f1 makes sense, but now the Urk completely ignores that and goes to b4. And yeah, that begins to be very interesting. So here, I think in this position, what you should do is to capture here. Why? Because the main strength of this faction is getting the puzzle pieces buffing each other. So if you remove one piece type, you slightly slow down the strength of this faction. So after captures, it attacks here, you just have to play this. And then the material is equal, and even, like, let's say that you trade everything, even you have an opponent filled with 3 pieces, your pieces here, especially the 10s, are way stronger than you think. So we have a king to f2, which is played instead, and this is a bit blunder here, I have to say, because now you have up to d3, and this is a pain in the ass, I have to say. After king to g1, you can have the very deadly move stacked to b5. Ouch! Very hard. So even if you try, I don't know where you're gonna put that. Maybe you put it on g1, and now you take it, and now this is just a free piece, and the Scarabs are back into the game. So instead in the position we have done to g6, and I don't really know what this move is for, and this seems very losing, because Artika finds the very cool move ram pushes f5. Remember that ram pushes pawn. And now this attacks the dung, and where do you think the dung can go? Here this is trapped, here this is trapped, here is trapped, also here, so it seems like this piece is completely dead. Maybe you can still go for the tactic here, but okay, this doesn't look that good here. Maybe there's some counter tempi here. So for example, let's say that you have this, you capture here, then you capture here, and then the material is pretty cool, and you try to survive the position. I mean, if you can try to get an exchange, normally you would be good. But instead, in the position, we have dung captures g2 with check, and here you can try to escape this ugly tactic going on with capturing, for example, with the chief, but you can also capture with the 10th. The 10 can push away up to 3 squares, any piece landing 1 square diagonal. And if you can't put it 1 square because there's just the edge of the board, okay, the piece is just pushed out of the board this way. So, very funny. Here, of course, you saw it, the king captured instead, and I guess this is not a good move, because we have still this kind of tactic here, and okay, you might survive a little here, because there's chief to h5 with check, and somehow, let's say, after the king moves to d8, then you can decide to move the 10 somewhere. So you're not that dead here, but I mean, you have to be careful somehow. So we have stacked to c6 instead, and I guess the idea is to try to get a discovered check while getting this thing. So we have chief to g4, which is played, and okay, it comes with a very subtle threat here to push the ram and threat this, and threat to capture at the same time, so very interesting. We have still a pawn to e3 check, which is played, and now after king to g1, you can consider taking here. Only problem is that you have to be very precise after this move, ram to f6. The problem is that you have to defend both pieces here. So let's say that you decide to put this here. Only problem is that now you're going to take here, and this threats to be a promotion here. So after captures here and captures there, there's one move that you can decide to play, even this move looks terrifying, is to play rhino to f8. And here the king is buffed, so it can move up to 2 squares, also 3 squares, so it defends the piece for now. But then you can have this move, and after this you have rhino g8, so this is still here. But after that you have 10 to f3, so attacking this. But fortunately you still have the stack to d7, so buying a move here and try to counter back the chief. So normally you will be surviving this. But this is very hard to play, and this is why in this position we have instead pawn captures d5 to be sure that there is no risk of tactics. So we have Saturn captures, and now rhino to f6. So be sure that this pawn is never pushed, and this is also defended this way. So we have ram captures e5, trying to deflect the rhino, we have her captures back, and now the satyr drags the up. Here, remember that the satyrs have a very special power which allow them to drag up to itself any piece landing orthogonally 4 squares. So this is drag, so the Urk has to move or not. Here, this is very interesting because it can be well placed some later to try to reach this here or try to get some ugly tactic. Is there something on the light squares? Here we have done to e7, which is played, and try to get a better position here. But now the 10 goes to e1, so doing the opposition, and we have king to f7. Here, I'm not sure what king 7 is for. I guess the idea here is to be sure that there would no the ugly check going on here, so with this you can just push the pawn, and if there's captures, capture. I don't really know. Maybe you could go for something like... Yeah, I don't know why the king feels threatened here. Maybe I missed something. But, or maybe you don't want to be in the line of sight of the tent, I don't know. The king to f7 is played, and now we have settled to c1, so maybe wanting to reroute this, and maybe try to get the exchange, winning exchange, I mean, if you can try to put the second 10 here. But instead we have Rhino to default with check, and here you have to be very precise on where you move your pieces. I mean, you can decide to block with a 10 here, but getting pin here in the game, maybe this is not the right idea. At the same time, if you decide to put the king here, then there can be some ugly stag move with, for example, a stag to b5 check. So you have to do something for the check, but here, because the stag moved, I guess this can be captured once. And after, let's say, this is captured twice, you have to deal against a double threat here. So, not that cool. So, maybe this is why in the game we have settled back to e3 defending, and now the Rhino goes to d6. So, not exactly the same square than before, but trying to get more activity. Now we don't have anything because, let me check. Oh, Artika lost on time here in this position. Okay, so very sad. Actually, the Centaur had better material chances here. Just to show you some continuation you could go for, you can decide to put the 10 here to try to get something, and also a next move you want maybe to exchange the queens and try to rely on the fact that you have two powerful 10s against the stuff. Also, you want to remove one of these three pieces with a trade to be sure that the coordination between the Scarabs would be broken, and then the strength on the faction would simply vanish. Because even though there's one piece of each type here, the strength of the Scarab is still here, and maybe even more than before, maybe. Because with less pieces on the board, you have more activity, because the board is pretty open here, I have to say. So, pretty interesting to see how it goes. But unfortunately, we don't see the continuation of the game because Artika flags. So this is the end of this encounter from the round 2 of the Matches New Era tournament. We're going to see each other next time for another crazy game. See you then. Bye.